people, welcome back to another great episode of Still Positive. My name is Dayna Marie, and I'm going to be holding your hand through this journey of this episode. I'm making it through the day. I have been not really doing so great. I've been feeling like very tired, and I got a biopsy recently, so that's really fun. And I'm just waiting for the results. I get them in 2 weeks, which is absolutely dreadful. I don't love thinking about what could the results be like for 2 weeks. So instead, I am trying to think about other things and, connect with other people that have been there and are still there and are continuing to be there for quite some time. So it's a tough space to be in, but I am happy that we are all here on this journey together. Today I am talking to Lexi, who is living with ovarian cancer. And it is tough that she found out that she had this disease during COVID. I feel for anyone that was trying to get diagnosed or did get diagnosed with something new in that time, because it's such a different time than anyone else has experienced, and just the care that they may or may not have gotten is really interesting. So I was glad to talk to Lexi and see how she is living her day-to-day living with ovarian cancer. Enjoy. I'm Dayna Marie, and this is Still Positive. Let's be real, people love to gloss over chronic conditions or disabilities with a fleeting comment like, just be positive, or a fleeting insult like, kale will cure you, as if your life was that easy of a fix. This is a podcast for when you face a different reality, knowing that positivity isn't a magic wand that's going to cure everything, but a flashlight in the dark that we may or may not have batteries to. Living with a chronic illness or disability makes you feel different, and your difference could be noticeable to others or not, but either can sometimes make you feel invisible. I'm here to tell you that your experience is valid and shared by others in the dark. Positivity is not the missing puzzle piece that's going to solve your life's puzzle, but it can be a beautiful tool that can help you grow. And sharing those experiences can make us grow together. We're really close in cancer anniversaries. Mine was on the 12th and yours was just the other day. So that's great. It's a weird freaking time, but I don't know how you feel about that too.
Yeah, it's very weird. Like everyone's going out to have their like bubbling rosé, and I'm there celebrating a cancerversary. It's very bizarre. But that is my reality.
Yeah. That's how I think of it too.
Yeah. And I feel like I never really, I'll celebrate anything. Like I love to like have a celebration. And I think it's because my parents did that, like growing up, like they were very into, like our birthday parties were total blowouts, and like we would have 8 million girls over because I'm one of 6 girls. And so we'd have all of these girls over, and my parents would move all of the furniture, and we would do like peanut rolling competitions, like where you would roll the peanut with your nose, and we would do like egg toss and like all these different things. It's just like my parents were going out to do like a full production. And so that is definitely a love language of mine, is doing that. And I think I took the same sort of approach with Cancerversary, where I was like, yeah, party. And then it started setting in that I was like, I think given like 10 years to live and like 1 year. So does that mean 9 now? Like I'm a little bit freaked out. Like it hit me, I think, after the fact, like after everyone had gone home and we weren't doing cake anymore and having a good time. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing the dark side of this.
Yeah, totally. And it is that bittersweet, like you sort of are like, I don't know how to describe it, because it's this like joyous, like I made it through this like whole year and like I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling, however that is. And yeah, it's just like whoa, like taking a look at everything that you've gone through and like all the collateral damage, that's just like, wow, this was a long year.
Yes, but somehow flew by. It's very bizarre.
So you did get like well, first of all, when did you got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, right? Any subtype?
Yeah, mine is low-grade serous. So oddly, it is one of the highest percentages of ovarian cancer is this like epithelial cancer where it grows on your tissues, I guess, versus like ascites or something like that. And we are only 10% of that tiny little group. Like we're a very small subgroup, and it disproportionately impacts women or people with ovaries in their 20s to 40s. And so it's like I think 1 in 1,000 people with ovaries are diagnosed with low-grade serous. It's a very rare subtype, and it's an odd sort of beast in that it's abnormal enough to be considered cancer, but not abnormal enough to actually respond to chemotherapy. So the majority of us don't respond to chemotherapy. Like I am just now 7 months out of frontline treatment, and at 6 months I had my first recurrence. So it's not a great prognosis. It's average 10 years. And we only receive 1% of all funding for ovarian cancer research. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. And so they gave you a timeline like as soon as you were diagnosed?
Yeah, so my diagnosis, and I think it's very common with ovarian cancer, and I think also broadly with just AYA cancers as well, is that we get brushed off
Oh my God.
so
So
often.
much.
It's like constantly like, oh no, it's your period, or oh no, like you're anemic, or whatever it is. That I was on like an 8 year, 8 to 10 year journey of having these symptoms and not knowing what was wrong with me and asking anybody and everybody. I mean, I was so desperate because the pain was becoming so unbearable that I quite literally I write down my goals every year. And one of my goals was find out the cause for this pain. And I, at that point, was convinced it was IBS because I'd been being told that. So I ended up having excruciating pain one day, and it was like my typical pain, but was very localized to my lower left side and had me vomiting uncontrollably. And that's never happened before. And my husband was on, this is pandemic time, so he's like working from home and on a Zoom call. And he ended up having to call my dad, and he was like, get her to the emergency room. Both my parents are nurses. So when one of them says go to the emergency room, I'm like, oh no, something serious is happening. Because nurses, they don't do that. They're like, I put a Band-Aid on it. But yeah, I finally got there, and they did a transvaginal ultrasound among a bunch of other things, pregnancy tests and x-rays. And I was convinced I had a bowel obstruction. So I went in there loud and proud and was like, it's bowel obstruction. They listened to my bowels and they were like, no, that your bowels are moving. So I didn't know what that meant at the time, but all of it came down to an emergency laparoscopic ovarian cystectomy. And they came in and were like, we did it, but you have 6 other cysts in addition to the 3 that were the size of your hand on your one ovary that were twisting your ovary. And that's what was causing the pain.
Oh my God.
And they were like, but we're leaving that. We think it's, manageable. But we did see this odd, tiny, tiny line of cells, and we think it's endometriosis, but we just biopsied it just in case. And that's not typical protocol, but they did it. And then 6 days later, called me and told me that it was cancer. And I don't have cancer in my family. I do not have any genetic mutations or hereditary mutations. So it's forever a mystery, I guess.
Right.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I know. And I hate that it is like that because I had the same thing, like in terms of not having it in my family, like perfectly healthy up until this point, nothing seriously wrong, colds and flus, whatever, but nothing in my bloodline. And they're like, we don't know what caused this. We're just going to try to go from here, basically. Like we had to figure this out now. So whatever caused it, we can't really focus on that and just like go forward. So
Yeah. And you get thrown into this vortex of being an unhealthy or an unwell person all of a sudden. And it's
yeah,
very bizarre because I have been a lifelong athlete and come from a nutrition background. So it's not as if I was an unhealthy person.
right.
And that's what I try and explain to people. It's like, this could happen to anyone. And there are 12-year-olds who are diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
frustrating thing is that there's no way to really reliably screen for ovarian cancer. I mean, it is mind-boggling that it's 2022 and most people, I did not know that your cervical pap smear does not detect ovarian cancer. It doesn't. There's no one way to do that. The
Yeah.
test has not been developed yet.
That's
So
insane.
it is very strange and very frustrating because it seems like something that could be achievable. And I hope that within my lifetime it is.
I do too, because honestly, even if there were testing to get to that point, I feel like a lot of people are still just unaware of the symptoms that are prevalent in cancer care. I mean, I thought for a while I had bronchitis because I was just coughing uncontrollably and I like couldn't breathe, but it was cancer. But like in terms of ovarian cancer, how did you said you were having a lot of like bloating and stuff like that? Like was there any other main symptoms that you had?
Yeah. So the bloating, the abdominal pain and bloating was my dominant symptom. There was no time basically that my stomach was not bloated. And towards the end months, I looked like I was 9 months pregnant. And I was just
Wow.
so bloated. I would do a workout and then turn to the side and be like my husband would be like, poke it. It doesn't move. Like it's just like this huge, it was very uncomfortable. And I also had extreme indigestion, which is actually how I realized that something was wrong and I was having a recurrence because that symptom is so intense and it happens in the middle of the night, early morning when I'm really when my stomach is empty, and that's very intense and sort of starts at the base of your diaphragm and works its way up and is in your shoulders. I also had frequent urination, which I think there's definitely this weird narrative that goes around of people being like, oh, I just have a tiny bladder. And so I was like, me too. I have that too. And I did not, and now I just don't have that problem. And I did not realize to what extent it was just it was so bad that I mean, people, even my friends now, they're like, well, there's this bathroom here and here if we need to stop along the way of wherever we're going. And I'm like, no, I don't have that anymore. Like I'm okay now. But frequent urination was definitely one. Bowel changes, bowel habits were definitely an issue. And that's another reason why I was misdiagnosed with IBS, was
Mm,
because they were like, well, you're swinging from constipation to diarrhea. And really, I just had these massive cysts that were like pushing on my bowels. And so I had a lot of that. And I had some towards the very end of like the week before I was diagnosed, I had some very odd spotting, which was extremely uncommon for me because I had been on birth control since I was like 14.
mm.
Uh, I was extremely tired. I thought I had COVID, maybe. I thought then I started having sort of lower back pain, and I thought maybe I have like kidney stone, like something doesn't seem right. I was so exhausted. I'm not that kind of person. I can perk up and be ready to go at any time, but I could not keep my eyes open.
Hmm.
So things were so constant, and me just having this pain for so long that I developed, I think, this really intense, very strong, I guess, way of dealing with the pain. And eventually towards the end, I feel like my body was like yelling at me to do something, but I just couldn't find the right people. I had been misdiagnosed or ignored so many times.
Right. And at a certain point when you have been told that like it's just this or like it's just your period or like you're thinking too much about it, it's like you start to say like maybe it is just like I'm overthinking things. Like this is actually nothing. And I do have to like minimize it to being like just cramps or like just a cough or something like that. When like your body is yelling at you, like you're saying, but sometimes you can't hear it. Like, and especially like before being diagnosed, my body was like telling me things that I was definitely not listening to. I was like, shut up. I'm going to go do whatever I want to do. Like I don't want to pay attention to you. But after I'm like, I can see the signs now. I can hear them and be like, okay, this is going to tell me this. And I have to listen because if I don't, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be really upset.
Yeah. And, to your point about minimizing, I think, I had gotten to the point where I started describing to people that I had chronic pain and I didn't know what the source of that was. And I guess I was like, I have IBS or whatever, but I was like, yeah, I'm just someone with chronic pain. Like, this is who I am. And I mean, towards the end on my 2020 journey and goal of trying to find an answer to this, I even saw a naturopath who told me that after a 90-minute session that was sort of like a weird psychoanalysis, that I was afraid of the dark. And the reason for my pain was because I was afraid of the dark. And so I had been
Oh,
gaslit for so long that I was just like, okay, I'll take these weird drops and take 1 teaspoon of it and then throw the rest away. Sure, that seems normal. I was willing to try anything. And that's what bugs me so badly is that I had all of the major symptoms of ovarian cancer. Why was I not aware of that? How did we not teach? How are we not being taught that? I mean, we sit through health classes and things, and we sort of know how our body works, but maybe sort of not. Like, where are the ovaries? Where do they?
right.
It's just wild to me that someone who was so in tune with my body and could detect these things happening to myself and was searching for answers, didn't know the basic information that would have sent me in the right direction.
Yeah.
Which is why I have been so adamantly trying to educate people and be as loud as possible about it, because I I just wish that information had been available to me. When you're on Google and you're looking for your symptoms, I'm sure that you were like coughing, throat hurts, like
Right, right.
I was like typing things in and all of it would come out to be like IBS or some sort of like weird like bowel thing. And
Yeah,
um, I mean, we're looking for the right answers. And if I had typed in all of my symptoms, why was ovarian cancer not coming up? It's
right.
just, it's so strange to me and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, but also too, like I'm sure if you did see it, you'd be like, well, that's just Google being crazy. Like that's just Google because like being so young and having this disease is so that's like the main thing that I'm searching to like really elevate is talking to younger people because like 18 to 35 and AYA cancer is not anywhere on anyone's radar really. And like that's a huge issue. Like because if I did see that when I was going through and searching for my symptoms, I would have easily just been like, yeah, right. Okay, sure. Like I don't have cancer. I have this other thing that I've heard of before a whole bunch that people get. And like it is so scary that when I got diagnosed, people are like, oh, that's pretty common for that age range. I was like, I've never even heard of it. Like, how is it common? How is that possible?
Yeah. And
But
for me, it's not like when you think about ovarian cancer, it's mostly like older women and they're like 60s, they've like
mhm.
gone through menopause, whatever. And, the first thing that my doctor said to me was, you are certainly not the poster child for ovarian cancer.
Right.
And we will never know why this happened.
Yeah.
And low-grade serous is fairly new as well. It was discovered I think in the last less than 20 years and or 20-ish years, and the fact that it disproportionately impacts people between the ages of 20 and 40, I don't know, it just feels it's just so odd. And I think that's part of what being a cancer patient is, but especially an AYA cancer patient when young and at this phase where you're supposed to be like taking off in your life and your career and figuring things out for yourself, you are faced with this extremely unsettling and bizarre and scary and infuriating sort of reality that no one else around you is experiencing. Because even though the numbers are rising and AYA cancer patients, it still is so, and even with the reality or the existence of social media and being able to connect us across, continents, it still is so isolating because you're
Yeah.
surrounded by so many people who don't have what you have and your friends don't have what you have, and you're like, I want to keep you in my life, but how do we do this? Like,
Right,
it's
right.
so strange.
And how do you connect with your friends when like they're talking about like their crazy like weekend and you're talking about like your hospital experience? Like, how do we
Yeah,
compare these two?
yeah, exactly. And like, I think it's very intense for me, and I know especially other like, well, I think cancer patients in general, if you've had some sort of treatment that impacts your fertility as well, that, being around your friends, at 28, while everyone is kind of thinking about planning their family and getting married, whatever, and you can't do that. And then it's compounded with maybe only living 10 years. And so you're like, do I adopt? Is that a bad idea? And so
Right, right.
things like that. But I'll talk even just about my cancerversary, being in New York City for the weekend, being with my friends and us all going out to dance. And everyone around me is drinking and being like, do you need a drink or whatever? And I'm like, no, I actually just took my oral chemo like an hour ago. So like, I'm good. And it's just like, it's a
Pre-game
different,
with my chemo.
yeah. And literally I am at like a bar and I have my chemo that needs to be refrigerated, like in a little like zip thing, and like it's in the bar's like refrigerator.
Oh
Like
my God.
I'm going out and I'm having a good time, but also I'm taking my chemo with me.
Oh my God, yes.
So like I think that it is such a weird thing, but you have to be able to continue to live your life, and it's so challenging to do that. And I think a lot of my challenge with it in my very Virgo frame of mind is things have to be perfect before I can enjoy myself. And I'm not in America's Next Talent or whatever that thing is, but and I don't know if you know of her, but Nightbird.
Oh, right. Yes, yeah. I've
So
seen
I
her
don't I
video.
don't actually, this is one of my weird like guilty pleasures, is like I don't actually watch the show, but I love to watch a golden buzzer montage. It just like makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And when she got hers, and I was like, oh my God, like an AYA cancer patient. That's so cool. And she looks like me and that's fun. And she made a comment about, you can't wait for everything to be perfect to be happy. And that has been so much, I think, the theme of my post frontline treatment and kind of dealing with the recurrence and trying to live life even though someone's telling you that you're dying.
Yeah.
And it's an extremely challenging reality to live in. And I think especially moving south and moving into a smaller city, I don't have all the resources that I had when I was in Philly. And then especially being a cancer patient during a
Oh,
pandemic. Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Just,
I mean, I understand too, like moving to a smaller city is just in general very challenging and like you're away from your friends and like you're trying to just like evolve in general. But I think that your videos in connecting with cancer patients have been really funny. First of all, they're hysterical and very relatable. And also, like, I just feel like that's a great way to connect with just like the community in general. I just feel like when I see your videos and like you're joking about like doctors being ridiculous or like gaslighting you, or even like the symptoms that you were going through, I just think that that's so important to like just maintain for like a community and like telling people about like what you're going through in like a funny way that's relatable. And I think that it's just great that you started doing those.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of staying positive, they've been very fun for me.
Oh,
Like
good.
I
Yeah.
fun while I'm doing this. And I recently actually quit a full-time job. Like I went from you know, finishing treatment July 13th to hopping into a new job September. And I was working full time and I thought I can do it. I did not enjoy the work. It was an extremely unhealthy workspace for me. And I think that there's a little bit of learning as an AYA cancer patient of like, or even a cancer patient in general, of like how to set boundaries and respect
Mm.
yourself. But I'm still healing in a lot of ways. And now I've got a new oral chemo going on to, deal with this recurrence. And I was feeling the physical stress and anxiety of being in that job. And once I cut that tie and I had a little bit of downtime and started to ask myself, how do I want to spend this time? Part of that time was creating more awareness, and Instagram, I feel like it's such a good way to connect with people our age who are going through this. And as I make these videos, I'm giggling and laughing because they're oftentimes ridiculous. And I stop myself and I'm like, wait, I'm having a good time right now. I am alone and I'm in sweatpants and recording a video of myself, but I'm having fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that of being able to stay positive and being able to make the space for that and listen to yourself. There is a lot of grieving to do around that. And it's very hard. It's very hard for people who know you so closely and so well to realize that, because it's hard for them to see as your hair grows back and you start looking like your normal self. But I think realizing that and diving into a discovery phase almost of like, I'm a new person. And like, what was it like whenever I was in fifth grade and I, dressed up for school as what do I want to be for school today? Like approaching it from that same sort of perspective of like, this is totally new.
Yeah.
And what could I do and how could I cope with things, or what's the best way for me to cope with things that is the best for me. It does not look the same for everybody, but for me, laughing and giggling and like having flexibility and freedom has been really, really good for me. It may not be a forever thing, but it's been a huge help.
Yeah. And like kudos to you for chopping off that job and like just saying, this is not for me, because there are so many people that just stay in those like and just grind themselves into it. And like just realizing that this is not serving me and like getting out is so essential for your health and like stabilizing any sort of stress, like just trying to like get out of that world. I think that that's like one of the hardest things because like how can you not be stressed? Is it even possible for people to not be stressed? But everyone's like, just like make sure you keep your stress low and like just hydrate always because like that seems to be the answer for everything. They're just like, oh, well, did you have enough water? I'm like, is that really going to solve my cancer? And like, what? But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and especially for cancers, and maybe all cancers, because I don't know, I do not have a cancer that someone told me like you're good for life. I just don't. But and maybe this is for everybody, but you have that sort of like fear that it's going to come back and that you are going to do something that causes it to come back. And I also think, especially for like a type A personality like me, I want to be able to control all aspects of my life. And at that some point, it becomes exhausting trying to control every aspect of your life to make sure that doesn't come back. And I think having my recurrence was somewhat of a blessing in a way, and that like I was doing everything right. If I could even begin to tell you all the things that I was taking and the infrared sauna and all the stuff, I mean, it was over the top. And my therapist has been, and that's another great way to stay positive. If you're able to go to therapy, highly recommend.
Yeah.
She was like, this, I think you have to stop using the word control and start using the word influence or impact, because nothing is ever completely in our control. There are so many factors that are outside of our control that influence a situation. And perhaps if you look at things from the perspective of, I can impact that, or I can influence this by staying healthy and exercising and cutting myself out of this totally toxic, unhealthy job, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, and be able to contribute to a better outcome or whatever it may be. And I think letting go of that control too, as it's not my responsibility for everything to end up being perfect, allows you to be more positive too. Because if you are constantly blaming yourself for not doing everything to a T, like, oh, with this medicine, like my feet and hands will like crack if I don't like constantly, like I sleep with Vaseline and like gloves and socks on. And so if I don't feel like doing that one night, then I'm like, and it's worse the next day, then I'm like blaming myself because like, oh, I need to control these things. But I think being able to take that a little bit off of your plate as something that is, you can influence it, you can impact it, but is it entirely, completely your fault, or is it your uh, doing entirely? No, there are so
Right.
many other factors. I especially think for someone who is very type A like me, trying to take that blame or feelings of guilt and responsibility out of the picture is extremely helpful, and just giving yourself some like space to
Yeah.
give yourself a little grace.
Right. No, absolutely. Because the narrative around cancer is so much like, oh, you can just fix this yourself. Like you can just eat healthy and it'll be okay. Or like you can cure your cancer with XYZ. And it's just like, it's so insulting. I'm just like, you don't think that like I'm trying to do these things? Like you don't think I want to be better?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that there is so much of that, whether it's a suggestion of, you should be doing this will cure your cancer naturally, versus like people, that narrative of like, oh, so and so didn't win their battle against cancer. And it places this sort of, I guess, narrative that we didn't fight hard enough, or like we did not do enough. And the reality is that like treatments work or treatments don't. And we're
Right.
doing the best that we can. And we obviously want to live.
Right.
So please stop putting the blame on the patient, because
Right.
it's exhausting and we're already going through enough.
We're going through way too much, like way too much to like
Right.
care about that shit. Yeah.
It's
So
wild.
when you were diagnosed, did you immediately start writing for, you have a blog called Hypochondriac. Did you start writing immediately?
Yes. Okay. So that's another like type A Virgoism that we have, is that I was terrified that one, this was going to change who I was. And it has. There's nothing we can do about that. It changes you to your core.
Right.
Um, but I also wanted to have complete control over the narrative. I did not want someone to come out and be like, oh, Lexi, the poor sick girl. Like, I just did not want
Hmm.
that. And so I immediately went out writing. And then it became this extremely therapeutic thing that was like at times hilarious, because some of the things that happen are like, I mean, this is absurd that this happened to me. For example, when that day in the ER, when we're trying to figure out what the hell was going on, it must have been the transporter's first day, like ever pushing a gurney. And he like got us stuck in several different locations. And it was sort of like Austin Towers, like boop, boop, like back and forth. Like it was so absurd. And when we finally got to my room, he like rammed me so quickly in there that like the computer like ripped off the wall like onto me. It was absolutely absurd. And so there are things like that where you're like, this is hilarious. It's not all dark, but it was also just extremely therapeutic to get it out and on paper and try and help people to understand what I was doing. And then I started realizing, hey, I'm informing people about this. I'm kind of guilting people about this. Like, do you maybe have 10 years to live? Here's a link below to donate. So like
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
trying to get people to have really humanize the uh, the cause, I guess. And I loved writing about it. And at first, when you're first diagnosed, things are happening like boom, 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 boom. You are in it. And then you finish whatever your treatment is and you try and go back to normal life. And now I'm sort of in a phase where I don't really know what I'm going to do with hypochondriac. I would love to think a little more like in finite terms. If I'd love to write my story and put it into a book and like let it be, because I think sometimes you have to get to a place, if writing is for you and it feels good for you, to put it out there and help people understand what you're going through. Even if it's a journal that you're keeping personally, if it's not serving you to some extent at some point in time, and you feel like you're trying to come up with content for people, take a break or call it quits. But for me, at that moment in time, it was an excellent way for me to talk about what was happening to me and help people understand and control the narrative, but also I think to compartmentalize a little bit and not constantly be grappling with what's going on.
Yeah. And that's so great that that was like helpful for you in that moment, because it is like so many things are happening. And like I made sure to do the opposite. I did not do any of that stuff. And I don't regret not doing it, because I'm sure I wouldn't have even like went back to read it. You find your way and like where you want to like process. And I think that that's just part of the journey. Like sometimes I don't want to process, but like, you just have to find your own way with it. And I think
Yeah.
that for you, that was hypochondriac. And like, while it, like you said, if it's causing you any sort of like, I have to like maintain this like persona that's not true to myself, like just, you find what, or like, it'll just lead you to like another beautiful path, it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's the good point is, I mean, you're not the person who you were before you were diagnosed. You're not the person who you were on the day that you were diagnosed. You're not the person who you were in the middle of chemo or whatever your treatment is. And we're constantly changing, whether you have cancer or not. And I don't think it's ever too late to start something like a blog, or if you want to keep a photo diary, or, whatever it is. I found similarly, I think that being extremely positive outside of my writing during treatment, I needed to do that. Like I could not see a therapist. Like they were trying to like poke holes in all of my things. And I was like, I feel great right now. I just raised $20,000. Like I was just always just focusing on the positives, because I was in that like survival mode. Like, and now, oddly, after all of this time, I've started with a therapist and since moving, and it's like I'm on a delayed coping sort of like in a different way, just with someone asking me questions and digging things out, versus me controlling that
Totally.
process.
Yeah, because that too is just like draining, overthinking, and like going in the circle can really just wear a hole in your brain for sure.
Yes.
So tell me about, so you did raise over $25,000 in like 4 months. What was the specific cause? Like when did you decide that you wanted to start getting into fundraising, and how did that go for you?
So when I found out that I had low-grade serous, and my doctors basically acted like, and I know many cancer patients can relate to this, but they act like they have seen into a crystal ball, and that they will, you will die. You will be dying in 10 years. Like that was sort of the reality. And I was even told at one point in time, well, don't focus on 10 years, because if you only get 6, you don't want to feel like a failure. And like,
Oh my gosh,
yes,
what?
so like bad bedside manner, like
Yeah.
terrible. And so I felt like I had a bonfire lit under my ass. Like, no, no, this is not happening to me. I refuse to allow this reality, and we're going to do something about it. So I needed to learn more about what low-grade serous was. That brought me to Cure Our Ovarian Cancer, which is the very first and only one of two low-grade serous charities. And they're out of New Zealand, started by Jane Ludeman, who is a genius, I think. And she has just done incredible work for low-grade serous and low-grade serous research. So on her website, I found that we only receive 1% of all funding for ovarian cancer research. And that infuriated me. I saw that, and on their website, they have that prostate cancer research receives 200 times that. And, you know, it just, I am a very action oriented person. My entire career has been in the public health world and like food access, urban food access. And it just felt very fitting for me to go and do something. And I felt like in this world that I was currently living in, I felt like I had no control over. I was stuck in this like revolving door of like hospital visits and, going home and dealing with symptoms and all of these different things that I could not control, that I needed something that was action oriented that I could control. And for me, that was fundraising, and it was spreading awareness. And I jumped into it. I first started doing just like I can, fundraise on Instagram and Facebook and like put that little thing out there. And then I thought, well, what if I did an online auction? So many friends who have so many great talents. So I'll ask them, and they're so incredibly giving. And then we raised $10,000. And then I decided to have a huge gala for my birthday because I love birthdays. We talked about celebrating earlier, and I raised over $18,000 in that one night. And so by the end of the year, I had raised over $53,000 starting March 21st of 2021. And
Wow.
I love doing it. If anybody is out there who wants to hire me to fundraise for low-grade serous and pay me, I will do it, and I will raise loads of money. I love doing it. It is like a calling that I've never felt before. I had a passion for urban food access. I loved spending time in school gardens and playing in the dirt with kids and helping them, harvest their carrots and radish, whatever it is. But to have it be something that's so intimately involved in determining your outcome and your future, and all of my friends who I have grown to love and adore over social media and following their lives who have low-grade serous, I have lost upwards of 10 friends just since my diagnosis to this disease. And it is disgusting, and it is unfair that we did not know what this was. The majority of us get diagnosed at stage 3C. I'm also stage 3C because it goes misdiagnosed for so long. It's compounded with, being someone with ovaries, being young, and having it be symptoms that can be taken as something else. And I just felt like I needed to get up and do something, and that doing nothing was not an option.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I loved looking at the giveaways and like all the stuff that you had put in place for fundraising. I was like, this is genius. Like I don't know why. And like also I understand the concept. Like you see raffles all the time, but for some reason seeing it on your page, I was like, why has no one done this? Like, are people doing this? Am I just like seeing this for the first time? I was like, this is genius. But like honestly, I was so impressed by like seeing that you raised so much money and like you were working with the American Cancer Society and like volunteering with them. Was that sort of like an influence that came after the fact, or was that the whole
It
time?
was during the same time, and I just felt, and I have a degree in political science, and even working in urban food access, you're constantly sort of dealing with state, federal sort of policy and things like that. And it felt like a natural place for me to be. And I reached out to the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network in Pennsylvania, and they did not have anyone my age on board at all in their volunteer group. And they're completely volunteer based. And I came on, they were thrilled to have someone my age to speak. And I had incredible opportunities of being able to write letters to editors and appear on the news and I even spoke to the our congressional cancer caucus and talked about how we needed to increase funding because during COVID, or a vast majority of funding that went to typically to cancer research was diverted for COVID research, and people are even saying that we've lost a generation of cancer research. So being able to be a part of that conversation was incredible, and doing Hill Day where you would meet with your representatives and sort of make requests for increased funding, research funding, and things like that was great, but also wasn't just about research funding. We talked about policies for insurance providers and not holding up coverage for things like when I went through, they refused to cover my first CT scan of my chest because they were like, no, like it's abdominal, like ovarian, like whatever. And so we had to like really fight that, and it was delayed. And so, arguing that the bill that was being proposed needed to really be passed because it limits the amount of time that insurance companies can do that, because it can really delay someone's outcome and their health and the care that they receive. So that was where I sort of fit in. But there are so many different organizations that you can volunteer for if that's something that you find that you want to do. But not everyone wants to jump into doing a bunch of work during treatment. But that's where I found like a comfortable place, I think, that I could manage things happening to me if I could have an active role in doing something.
Yeah. And I'm sure too, like that sort of proactive distraction was probably helpful.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely was, and kept me grounded and kept some sort of semblance of normalcy. Like, oh, I'm still working, just around a totally different subject. But
Right.
also felt very natural for me to like be in a public health sort of environment. It helped me immensely. I'm not good at sitting still and doing nothing. It's not something that I can do. And that's some people's comfort space, is to just like put on a show and like chill out. Of course, there are those days, but like I am such a busybody. Right now, I'm trying to put together a wine tasting fundraiser and securing this amazing rooftop location. And if anybody else there is out there trying to fundraise for whatever your rare subtype or whatever it is, I just say go for it. Just go for it and have fun with it. I also just love to plan a party. I think my dream job is to like I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, like a great Gatsby figure. Like I could just like throw amazing parties
Yes.
and just like give the money to a great cause. Yeah, that would be ideal. But I also do want to say that I have had a privilege, I think, that other, especially AYA cancer patients don't have, and that I just have been able to not work. I pull in some money from different partnerships and things that I was doing before all of this and whatever. But, I have an incredible partner who I've been able to, who's been able to support me in a lot of ways and be there for me in a lot of ways, even when we didn't have family in Philadelphia when I was going through my frontline treatment. And even now, as I had that sort of freedom to say, I don't want to work at this toxic place because I have a partner. And I think a lot of AYA cancer patients aren't long-term with somebody when they're 28 or 27 and don't have the freedom to just do that. And, and some people's partners leave them if they're not together that long, especially hearing like, what, you're not gonna be able to have a baby, you don't have a uterus anymore, you're not, you like it just, I
Right, right.
think I can't say that I've done all this amazing stuff without acknowledging that I have had an incredible support system through my partner and my parents and my in-laws, and just having that structure has been wonderful.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Seriously. And like for you to have that self-awareness and like also just be giving all of your time to like Cancer Foundations is really amazing of you. Like you're doing so much. And I think that it's just so impactful what you have brought to the table so far. And only being in this cancer world for such a short amount of time, you've really just given so much already that like it's going to be amazing to see what you do next. Honestly, I'm so excited.
Thank you. I hope that I have many, 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 many more years left to do
Yes.
amazing things. That's my hope. So yeah, I have a lot of things kind of planned, and again, I'm just so lucky to be able to have the space to be listening to my body and taking care of myself and setting those boundaries. And I think even if you don't have a way to pause your work, your formal work life, and reflect on that, you can still do small things like writing things down and making lists and setting goals that will help you eventually get there. But there are many, I think, many ways to stay positive, and it can be so difficult when you're in this situation. And I'll say I'm not like this all the time. When I had my recurrence, I felt like I was completely just back at day one and like hopeless. And you do have those moments and you have those pits, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to get out of it. But there are so many ways for us to continue enjoying life, even if it's not perfect. And I'm still definitely figuring that out, and look forward to many, many years of being able to continue to evolve and figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, exactly. And just like looking forward to the next check mark, what's the next mile marker that I'm making for myself that like feels genuine and like that I'm looking forward to. And then like, what's the next five that I'm going to do, like just keeping that momentum going because having something to look forward to while also being okay with it being canceled if something happens. Like
Yeah.
that's also something because, I was at a point like you can plan and plan and plan. And then if something falls through, sometimes that's like the breaking moment that you're like, I can't like follow through with anything. I feel like everything is like up for being like destroyed. But if once that is also factored into it, I feel like that's a perfect balance level there where you're just actively looking to do things, but okay if they fall through. Like,
Yeah, I have been really adapting recently to this new medication, how it makes my face look, and I'm on the tail end of that, I think. But I looked like I was wearing someone else's face, and it was just like Phantom of the Opera-y, like not good. And I was just adjusting to, I mean, gosh, it happened in like 1 week's time, and someone invited us like come over to like our beach area and this will be great because we're very coastal here. And I wanted to go so badly, but I was having like full anxiety attack that I could not go outside. And
mhm.
I one was got to a point where I was like, why am I sitting here and wasting time crying and being anxious about it when I'm going to be anxious about this all night if I go? What I want to do is sit down on the couch and watch Search Party or whatever it is and giggle and like be comfortable under a weighted blanket in my PJs. Like, and that's okay because that's what I want right now. I actually don't want to go there because I don't think I'm going to be comfortable. And being okay with that and being
Mhm.
okay with being able to do it at a later time. And also using Instagram Reels and TikTok as a way to put your face out there, even if it's not looking how you want it to look, and just get used to it. And you have these moments where something so small will happen, like you drive down the road and your favorite song Smash Mouth All Star comes on and you roll down the windows and you're just like, this is I'm alive and I'm having a great time right now. And I think that there's just a way for you to appreciate little things day to day and be okay when things don't go exactly to plan. And it's forever an adjustment, and this is not just a cancer patient thing, it's an everybody thing. Everyone's trying all the time to be perfect or have the perfect life and portray that all the time. But isn't there something freeing about having your life be so imperfect and being able to like have that power and
Yes.
be making jokes publicly about a chemo fart and whether or not it's like, can you trust it? I think that there's something like freeing about being able to like march to your own beat.
Yeah. And like not give a shit about what anyone is thinking because you're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to care about what you're thinking about me. And like, it's fine. Like, I'm going to do
And
my own
also,
thing.
could you do what I did? Because like me showing up in Miami and having a scar, a 21-inch scar down my abdomen, and people being like, oh, and I'm like, it's fine. You couldn't do it. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. I love it. Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, seriously, thank you so much. I'm so happy that we were able to connect because you're such a beautiful soul. And I was so like inspired by looking at your page. And I just think that what you're doing is so amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Of course. Thank you for doing what you do. And I just appreciate you giving me the time.
Well, yeah. Aren't you so amped up after listening to that episode? I think it's so cool. I was getting so jacked up just listening to her being like, yeah, raise money. Yeah, live life to the fullest. That's so cool. Thank you so much, Lexi, for jumping on the call. And I hope that anyone who is listening who is inspired by that episode and wants to do some fundraising for an organization that is right for them, please do. I loved hearing that, and I loved that she was so passionate and yet truthful about how the duality of living with this disease can be. It's amazing, but that's why we're here, Still Positive Fam. We are trying to connect and be here together for each other because it is super weird going through this, but also we're not in this alone. So if you want to follow Lexi, I highly suggest watching her reels and following her for all of her fantastic parties that she's been putting on for these fundraising events. Her link is in the bio. And if you want to donate to STAAR Ovarian Cancer Foundation, the link will also be in the bio. Follow Still Positive on wherever you get your podcasts, like and subscribe, do all the fun stuff, and so you will know when a new episode is coming out. Thank you again, people, and enjoy the rest of your day. Keep it sick. Keep doing what you're doing.